If you want to know how much a couple trusts each other, don't look at their anniversary photos. Look at their bank statements. A question almost every couple fights about behind closed doors is this one. Is merging your money an act of ultimate commitment? Or is keeping separate accounts just keeping a suitcase packed by the front door? Money is the #1 non-physical cause of divorce in North America. But here's the wild part. We treat money like it's just math. It's not. Money in a relationship is security, power, autonomy, and trauma wrapped up in a Venmo notification. The first bill date. In an era where we fight for equal pay, who pays for dinner, and what does that payment actually buy? To merge or not to merge? Does combining bank accounts build up a bulletproof marriage, or does keeping separate money protect your sanity? Hello, all, and welcome to yet another episode of Love Hacks. I'm your host, Renee. Before we jump in, hit that subscribe button and drop your hot take in the comments. Do you and your partner share an account or keep it strictly split? Let's get into it. So let's start off with the first date transaction. Who pays on the first date in 2026? So here we got to take a step back, folks. What do we choose? The old script? Or do we choose the modern dilemma? Okay, well, let's talk about the date one. Historically, the man paid because, well, women legally couldn't own credit cards until the 1970s. And yes, they made significantly less money. The payment was a demonstration of provision. But today, young women are out earning, and yeah, they're even earning more than young men in many major cities. So why are we still awkwardly doing the check dance when the bill hits the table? Well, there's a psychology of payment. When someone pays for the entire first date these days, what are they actually saying? Option A, I value your time and I want to court you. Option B, I am establishing dominance, entitlement to a second date. But if they go down the split perspective, if we split 50-50, we start on equal footing without obligation. But here's the plot twist. Studies show that even when women offer to split, many men feel emasculated if they accept. Meanwhile, many women feel that if a man doesn't offer to pay, it indicates a lack of effort. We're trapped in a paradox where tradition clashes with modern values. Now, is there a solution? Well, yeah, there's a very practical one. Here's the golden rule for first dates. Whoever asks pays. If you invite someone out to an expensive cocktail bar, you host. If you want a zero-pressure environment, go for coffee or a walk. Stop using dinner bills as an audition for marriage. Yeah, that's very true. You know, if you don't want to complicate your life, hey, grab a jabba. or go for a walk. Each of you can take their dogs if you have dogs. If you have a walking cat, a cat. If you have a horse, who cares, right? But it it all depends on the tone. But if you kick off at an expensive cocktail bar and you're the one who asked to do this, you're going to be footing the bill, right? Now, it does depend on the culture too, but I think these days a lot of young people get this better than old school. I come from the old school. I can tell you, I was always told that the man paid. But now that I have an offspring of my own, well, I say it depends. And really, you really don't want to hit the ground running. You know what I mean? You don't want to hit the ground running in terms of formalizing things way too quickly. I mean, you're just getting to know each other. So I really would recommend, yeah, a coffee. Alcohol can cloud our minds sometimes, right? So I wouldn't go with that. I'd go with a coffee, even if it has to be decaf. Now, the account divide, merging versus independence. Does keeping separate money mean you don't trust each other? So here we're talking about something deeper. This is not a first date anymore. This is an actual relationship. Let's look at the traditional case for merging. Once you're in a committed long-term relationship or marriage, the big question hits. Do we open a joint account? Yes, the old school view is simple. What's mine is yours. Merging forces ultimate transparency. You are one financial team with one set of goals. Proponents say that keeping separate accounts creates a yours versus mine mindset that breeds resentment when one person earns more. So it's delicate, right? Especially if somebody makes more than the other. Uh-huh. Now, in contrast, we have the modern defense of financial autonomy. So, yeah, on the flip side, financial independence isn't about planning a breakup. It's about personal safety and autonomy. Many of us watched our parents stay in unhealthy relationships because they had no financial exit strategy. Having your own money means you are in the relationship because you want to be, not because you're financially trapped. Plus, nobody wants to justify why they spent $80 on a haircut or a video game. So, yeah. And then we've got the income disparity trap. What happens when partner A makes 150 grand and partner B makes 45 grand? If you split the expenses 50-50, partner B is living paycheck to paycheck while partner A is saving thousands. This isn't equality, that's financial strain disguised as fairness. And we do see cases like this. So, I mean, the division, you really have to do your numbers. You have to sit down with your partner and do your numbers. Because if your partner is making way more than you are, there's no way that that it's fair. We have to think of relativity, proportional uh investment, if you will. Yeah, if he's making 500 grand, okay, which is a lot, and you're making 20, uh yeah, I'm going to say this cliche, do the math. Now, here I'm talking about money, but we can also throw in chores. You know, things that have to be done that don't necessarily cost money, but that have to be done. And so if you're going to go the modern way, which I do think is healthier, that's my own opinion, well, then, hey, okay, you want us to go 50-50 even though make way less than you do? Well, we go 50-50 on everything. That includes chores, that includes child raising, if there are children. If there's no children, but there are mascots. Things like cooking, washing, vacuuming, washing clothes. It's not just bills we're talking about here. We're talking about everything because a house or apartment, well, they don't stand on their own, right? So you really have to go in with a clear mind and you have to be able to talk about these things with your partner. Because if you can't, trust me, you're going to have a lot of problems. This is real life, folks. You're not just going to go off and marry a prince. And even if you did, there's no guarantee you're always going to have someone in waiting, if you catch my drift. Even the wealthiest couples have to break the numbers. Not just because of what they're living, but also being able to see eye to eye on things like, oh, what if the stock market crashes? What if I lose my job? Things like that happen more often than not. Now, let's get into the yours, mine, and ours blueprint. Here's the strategy. How do smart couples structure their money without breaking up? Okay, so we're going to look at an account hybrid model. So what is the most sustainable one? Account 1, ours, a joint account for shared living expenses, rent, mortgage, groceries, utilities, joint savings. Account 2, your private account for personal fun, hobbies, clothes, and guilt-free spending. Account 3, mine, their private account with the exact same freedom. So, let's delve into this further. Personally, I think that if you've got your roles straight, like if you know exactly how you're going to go about the home you live in. Like let's say you pay 30 or 40% whereas your partner pays 60%. Okay? Depending, 60 or 70 depending. I still think you can have a joint account if the chores have been properly defined as well. The extras that you want, like let's say you want to have more internet. I mean, different internet companies rather than having just one company in case of storms or whatever. You hire 2 or 3. The electricity bill, looking after what is air conditioning or heating, depending. If you're clear on all these things, but really you have to sit down and talk about this, and not just household issues, but also outings. For example, how often do you go to restaurants in 1 month? Do you go every Friday? Do you go every Saturday? Do you do both? Do you go 3 times a week? Do you ask for takeout a lot? Right?
Looking for real conversations about love, connection, and everything in between? Listen to Love Hacks, honest, heartfelt, and in 4 languages: English, Espanol, Francais, and Portuguese. Find your version wherever you get your podcast. See you soon.
The supermarket, the groceries. Okay, what do we both like? What goodies do I like? What goodies do you like? Okay, how much are we going to be spending if we're two people? Are we going to go on a weekly basis? Are we going to go bi-monthly on a bi-monthly basis? If you have a pet, what sort of food are you going to give that pet? Is it a cat? Is it a dog? Is it a parrot? Maybe you have something else. Just every single thing you should really sit down with your partner, grab a pen and paper, and it'll take some time, but start clarifying and analyze your situation. Yeah, analyze it. Don't just do things in a heartbeat. No, you have to sit down and break the numbers. And a lot of people won't want to do that. They might even get offended. We'll tell them to grow up. Because if you're going to open a joint account, you have to have this conversation or these conversations. Okay? Because money doesn't grow off trees, folks. And you can't live off love only. And if there's a bigger breadwinner, well, so be it. But in some way, shape, or form, there has to be some sort of compensation or balancing out in a just manner, not abuse, not the abuse of power. Because when there's an abuse of power in a relationship, chances are that relationship will end. Now, if we look at account 2, yours, meaning your private account, and they have their own, which is account 3. Well, then, yes, I think maybe you should do the supermarket separately. If you're not doing the joint account, I would go separate ways, because at the end of the day, maybe you don't like the same thing. Maybe you kind of do, so you can discuss that. But if, for example, you're vegan and you don't eat any meat and your partner is carnivorous, well, obviously, you can't have a joint supermarket account. Not really. You do your supermarket, he does his. Oh, sorry, your groceries. Yeah. Also, things like the gym. If you don't like the gym, you prefer going to a swimming club, well, again, that's separate. You can't get joint passes. Yeah. But you need to have that conversation as well. I mean, if you're very different in terms of what you eat, what sports you do, what hobbies you have, but you still love each other, we'll just have that frank talk and say, look, it's too complicated for us to have a joint account. So how about this? We do split the rent bill, okay, equally. Or maybe if your partner makes a lot more, well, they absorb more, but you compensate in something else, like I don't know, if you're living in a home and you have to hire a gardener, well, you pay the gardener, right? I know a few couples like that, and yeah, they've gone for split accounts because they're so different. They do joint, well, they do joint payments when it comes to their house maintenance. But when it comes to hobbies or food, or sorry, sports, they're very different. Ergo, they each pay their own way. One of them plays tennis, the other one prefers going to the gym. And that's it. They don't go to the gym together because they don't have that same interest. And there's nothing wrong with that. The thing that's wrong is when you want to insist on doing everything together when you don't have that much in common. And there are plenty of couples out there that don't have a lot in common, and yet they love each other because they appreciate their differences. You're not marrying your twin, you're marrying someone you can create an equilibrium with. And there's 3 or 4 paths to that, depending. If you're very similar, then yes, I recommend the joint account because you both go to the gym, you both eat the same thing. That's different. There, yes, it's joint. It should be joint. But if you're very different people, so be it. Figure out the math. And as for the outings, yes, I think that depending on who makes more, well, I'll invite you, you invite me. And it changes again with kids. There, yes, I think joint is better just because there you have more people, kids, gets more complicated. So there I would go with joint when you have children. But if it's just you and your man, you know, depending on your interests, you can go split. Yeah. And but instead of splitting bills 50-50, split them proportionally based on income. If you make 60% of the household income, you pay 60% of the shared bills into the joint account. This is for joint accounts. This keeps the financial burden equitable and removes financial resentment. So, yeah, I mean, you're not going to ask somebody who makes 20% and you make 80%. I'm sorry, it just can't be done that way. You cannot ask the other person to fork out the same amount of money. Now, effort, well, yes, you can see it in the effort. For example, the partner makes much less than you do. You buy the ingredients. Here again, we're talking about joint accounts. And this person cooks them for you and for them. So it really is a question of sitting down, grabbing that pen and paper, breaking it down, and being completely honest with each other. Okay? Don't invent a whole story of success and how well you're doing it if you're not in that situation, and vice versa. You're a couple for goodness sake. So you should have that level of trust to be able to discuss matters like these. And trust me, folks, they're important. I mean, you can talk about love all you want till you're blue in the face, but if you're living with someone and you're not talking numbers, don't tell me later I didn't tell you. All right? Because it's part of life. It's part of life and well, sorry, I've got a bit of a cough. You should discuss this. So basically, folks, and I really want you to pay attention to this. Keeping separate accounts doesn't mean you're preparing for a breakup. Please don't make it dramatic because it doesn't mean that. It means you value individual autonomy with a partnership, and expecting one person to always pay on a first date belongs in the last century. Well, that's when you start off, when you start dating. Folks, money isn't a romantic killer, but silence about money can become a romantic killer, especially if you're already in a relationship. The healthiest couples aren't the ones who agree on every dollar. They're the ones who can talk about dollars or euros or pesos or yens or whatever you want without getting defensive. Okay? And that really is very hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. Talking about money without getting defensive. Because once you get defensive or they get defensive, all harmony is lost. Thoughts are clouded, and you can't reach a solid decision or decisions because you're on the defensive and they are too. And that's not what this is. You want your relationship to work. You have to talk about this. Hmm. Especially if you decided to live together. Because no, you can't go outside and think that you'll be able to rip a leaf and that's money. So I want you guys to ask yourselves these questions. Have you ever broken up with someone over how they handled money? Like if you saw they were big spenders. Let's say you weren't living with them, but you were dating them and you just saw that they just, you know, spent more than they had and constantly had credit card debts, etc. If you were in a position of getting married, would you sign a prenup? This has become quite a common thing, the prenup. Again, you shouldn't feel offended. You should just read it. It's standard procedure these days. So think about those questions, like really contemplate uh, both questions. Maybe you have broken up with someone because of how they dealt with money. I can tell you I have, because this person overspent. They're not bad people. The person is not a bad person. But I thought, oh my, if I marry this person, we're going to have a lot of financial trouble. And the last thing I want to do is be bailing somebody out or myself out for that matter, if he or she is my partner. And as for the prenup, I did sign a prenup. And I think it's the best decision I could have made because it was split goods. I'm not one for sharing assets until after you're married, but the stuff you had before, I think should really be yours because you're building something new with your partner. Again, that's how I think, right? But you never know. You got to go in with your feet on the ground and not panicking and knowing what you're doing. And if we start from the very beginning, the first date, yeah, if you suggested the most expensive bar in town, well, at least you should offer to pay one drink, to pay for one drink, and then the other person pays for the other, or something like that, because it was your suggestion. That's why, once again, I am going to resist the temptation of wanting to go to the most expensive bar or restaurant in town on the first date. I think grabbing a cup of coffee and being able to chat for a while without feeling a tremendous financial burden is much better than going out to a fancy schmancy restaurant on the first date. That is my recommendation. At the end of the day, you're there to get to know the person and vice versa. Yes. Um, a trending place, well, perhaps if the first date works, the second one, well, then yes, you can go to somewhere trendy, but don't do it on the first date. I wouldn't do that. I've seen disasters on reality TV and that, and quite frankly, I feel it's very, mm, it's It's not intimate enough for the first date because, guys, you go on that first date to listen to the person, to learn about the person, and vice versa. And that first date is going to determine a lot of things, whether you want to go on a second date and whether you see the possibility of a solid relationship in the future. So, yeah, keep a cool head on your shoulders. And well, folks, I'm just about to wrap up. Once again, if you liked this episode of Love Hacks, go ahead and subscribe. We always welcome our subscribers. And I wish you a most excellent week. Have a good one, guys. Take care. Bye.
If this episode resonated with you, make sure to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.